Why digital marketing? Like, what got you into that? Was it something that you were studying in school that got you excited about it?
Yeah, so I went to a really cool high school where we were able to pick. It was a magnet school, so it was a public school where you get to pick a technical area of focus. I picked digital media, so I learned graphic design, photography, video editing
In high school?
In high school,
Really?
Yeah, I had a 4-year focus of it for
Wow.
that. About 20% of my coursework was.
And that's called a magnet school?
It's a magnet school here in Vegas. I've heard
Okay.
it called charter schools as well, but I don't think you get a. I think it's slightly different, but it was really cool. It was a really great experience. And by the time I graduated, I was moderately bad at all of those things, but I thought I was good.
Okay.
So I started trying to get freelance contracts to get some cash on the side and had varying degrees of success with that. And that was enough to keep me motivated.
So what did those freelance contracts look like? Like, what was that first deal where you made money from doing some type of digital marketing?
My first project was I was hanging out at a bar, hookah lounge thing when I was in high school, and the guys recognized me because I was a local, and they saw me always on my computer, always wearing glasses, looking like a computer guy, right? And they came up to me and they're like, "Hey, are you a computer guy?" I said, "I guess so." They're like, "Can you make us a website?" I didn't know how to make a website, but I knew about companies like Shopify and companies like WordPress, and I figured how hard could it be?
And what year is this?
I was about to go into my freshman year of college.
Okay, this is early Shopify days.
Yes, early Shopify
Okay,
days.
yeah.
So the guy says, we have this grocery store that we want to open. Can you make us a grocery store website? I had never done that before, but again, I figured how hard could it be?
Yeah.
So I accepted. I wrote up a contract and I formed an LLC, which I thought at the time you had to do in order to do any business. I made myself a quick logo. I just tried to make myself look like an established company, presented it to these guys as a contract. I took 50% of the $1,000 contract up front. They said, sure. They were kind of impressed that I had all that stuff together. They gave me the $500. I started working on it, realized I was way out of my depth, tried to hire someone with that $500, then thinking that, then I could take the profit and have a 50% margin on the deal. That would be a great way to begin.
Yeah.
Paid someone to do it. They turned it into me. It was not good enough.
Jeez.
Because, surprise, this is an alert to anybody watching, $500 is not enough to make a website of that type.
Okay, mark that
of really,
down.
Of really
Okay.
any type. Neither is 1,000, neither is 10,000 for a grocery website. But I didn't know that. So I paid this person. They did their best. They turned it into me. It wasn't good enough. So I figured I would stay up all night, crack a Red Bull, and just try and get through it. I did my best. I turned it into them. They were displeased with the outcome, which rightfully so, to be honest with you. It was not very good.
Yeah.
So I ended up having to refund them the $500. So I was negative $500 on my first deal. Not a great start, but I did learn how to basically make websites that are a little easier.
Okay.
So while grocery store websites are very complex for a number of reasons, other websites are less complex. Service businesses, more simple types of e-commerce sites can be simpler. So that type of project I knew was out of my league, but I had the skills to take easier projects, and then I began marketing my services, and I took that $500 cost as not a loss, but as a price of education.
Yeah. Walk me through that all-nighter that you pulled. Like from where you started to where you decided to stop and say, I'm going to turn this in. Like, what did that look like?
So the day I signed the contract was my last day living in Las Vegas before I went to school in Arizona. And I was in a dorm, and my roommate was an engineer, and he would be in classes and working all day. Then he would go to sleep, and then I would start working on my websites, and it's the middle of the night, and I'm having fun figuring it out, but I'm also stressed. It's kind of a combination of like enjoying solving the puzzle and doing the problem, but also stressing because these guys paid me to do it. I made a promise that I have to keep.
Yeah.
So there was a bit of me that was maybe resentful towards the person that failed to complete the project, which was a misplaced resentment, but I was feeling it.
Yeah.
And then my roommate's alarm went off to wake up. And then I realized I'd worked through the night and not accomplished very much.
Yeah. Yeah. But would you say that you came to that realization during the all-nighter of, hey, I can do this, but maybe just not this category?
No.
Okay. When did you come up with that idea?
After I was sitting on a $500 loss of having refunded them. That's when I'm like, what did I get for this $500?
Yeah. And $500 is a lot of money when you're a college kid too.
100%.
You can live a couple of months on $500, maybe longer than that.
Yeah, especially because I had no living expenses at the time.
Yeah. So you have to eat that and realize, I mean, it stings enough that you feel like you kind of let them down, and maybe you overpromised and certainly underdelivered on what you overpromised. But what I'm struck by is the fact that leading up to that process, you just had this figure it out attitude. And it's one of the things that the people I've talked to on this podcast specifically that end up being successful, yes, there are always early failures, but you come into that with a figured out attitude and I can get it done. The difference between you and some others is that when you failed a person, someone that you let down. Whereas I talked to other people, especially in product businesses, when they've kind of just failed themselves, or they hit the recipe wrong the first time, or the Amazon listing just was terrible the first time and they had to work and iterate it. Well, there was no person on the other end of that was being let down, except for a customer that wasn't going to buy it anyway. But in your case, you're dealing with letting people down that you had met, that you'd made promises to. That cannot have felt good. And how did you bounce back from that feeling to say, I'm going to go and do this again and do it again?
It feels horrible. And if you're ever thinking of starting a service-based business, that is something that you have to come to terms with the fact that your identity will be commingled with the reputation of the business very heavily. And that's probably the case with product businesses as well, but you hit the nail on the head right there, that your sale is actually a promise. The job is beginning when you get the sale, not ending.
Yeah.
And when something goes wrong, which will happen no matter how big you get, when you get big, it happens less frequently because your quality is better in terms of percentage of the time, but more frequently because the volume of transactions you're doing is higher. So that just the raw number can increase. You really have to learn how to bounce back from it. And how you bounce back from it, for me, I can't the same day. That day is just an L. I've lost. And then the next day I'm okay.
Yeah. But it's like you've gone through that process multiple times now to know how to deal with that. And I'm sure that there's elements of it where at this stage of the game, some of those failures are not really the fault of the person doing the work as much as maybe a communication of expectation in the beginning with the customer. Like, is that a true statement?
One thing that I've come to terms with is it is always your fault as the business owner. Every single thing that can go wrong is your fault. Because you're the one who wrote the contract, you're the one who picked the client, and if you're thinking, well, I picked the only contract I had to, it was the only option I had, I needed the money. Well, you're the one who needed the money. You're the one who put yourself in a situation where you needed it. Even you can trace that as far back as you want to. You are always to blame. And if it's someone else who's working for you, you're the person who hired them, you're the person that trained them. It's always your fault.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel that way. They take that agency of like, nope, like this is all on me. And it's a very different mindset that you get when there's someone who's out there who says they want to be an entrepreneur. Maybe they're an employee today and they've got that deflect syndrome, I call it, of like, oh, you're coming at me? Well, it was so-and-so's fault. Like, that's not my job. It's so-and-so over here.
Yeah.
And there's not that desire, it seems, to say, no, the buck stops here with me. I wonder, though, is it just by nature of the fact that they are an employee today and that they've not taken that responsibility? They're not the one that sold that contract. Or is it a personality type that maybe is not set out for entrepreneurship? What do you think about that?
I don't think it's a personality type that's not set up for entrepreneurship. I think it is a taste that you need to get a taste of. So once you see what it feels like to have everything be your fault, that means the good things are also your fault. And it's also an empowering thing. Once you come to terms with the fact that every bad thing that happens in your business is your fault, that means that you are the person who's responsible for fixing it, and you can do it. So it becomes an act of confidence in yourself to be able to trust yourself to be able to solve future problems. I don't know what problems I'm going to run up against when I scale my business to twice its current size.
Yeah.
But I know that the future version of me will be able to figure it out. It'll be painful and it'll suck for, I get 10 bad days a year. It'll be one of those 10 days, right?
Yeah.
But eventually I'll power through it. And I don't think it's a personality trait. I think once you get a taste of it, you really can learn to love it.
Yeah.